Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today, I'm going to be giving you guys a tour of my graphic and game settings on Battlefield 2042. I've seen a lot of people complaining about how the game looks, or that their performance is a bit choppy and stuff like that. Just know it is the beta right now. No matter what you do, your performance is going to be a little bit choppy. The game is not 100% done yet, but I do have a few options that I have turned off or that I have turned on that can help improve your gameplay experience in 2042. So let's get into it. I'm going to hit on options here and go into my general settings. Under general settings, camera shake amount. You should turn this to 0. By default, it is at 100. This means that if somebody blows up a grenade near you or a C4 or shoots a rocket at you, your camera is going to shake uncontrollably, and if there's players around that you're in the middle of shooting, your aim is going to get knocked off. So I'd recommend, for your own good, to turn camera shake amount down to 0. Of course, here under general settings, we also have crossplay. If you want that on or off, you can, turn that on or off. If you want to allow followers, then you can turn all that sort of stuff off, shared usage, all that sort of stuff. So that's under general settings. We're going to go into display now, and this is what is going to make the most difference for everybody. Obviously, this is mainly for PC. I'm not sure if console actually gets any of these options, but if you do, then this will overlap, but if you don't, then obviously, unfortunately, I can't really help you. I'm sorry. Starting off though, of course, you want to put the game in full screen mode. You want to set your native resolution of your monitor, whatever that may be. You want to set your refresh rate. That is a very important thing, because if you're getting over 60 FPS, you want to be able to actually physically see it. So my monitor is a 144 Hz, or apparently it's a 143.855 Hz, whatever. So I've got mine set all the way up because obviously I want to be able to see as many frames as I possibly can. So if you don't know how refresh rate works, refresh rate basically is what your monitor actually allows you to see. So if you have a 60 Hz monitor, the most amount of frames that you can physically see with your own two eyes is 60 FPS. But if you have a 75 Hz monitor, a 100 Hz monitor, a 144, a 240, 270, I don't even know what they make now, probably all of those, you got to set that up so that you can actually see as many frames as possible to get the most out of your experience. Next up here we have field of view. I'm assuming console probably has a field of view slider this time around, at least on the Series X and the PS5, I would assume. So field of view, you want to max that out. The vehicle third person perspective field of view, you also want to max that out. And for ADS field of view, you also want to max that out. That's going to actually make your recoil a little bit easier to control, I believe. So you're definitely going to want to have that on. Next up here we have under graphics settings. A lot of this you're going to want to turn off. So high dynamic range, you're going to want to turn that off. Motion blur, you're going to want to turn that all the way down to 0. Chromatic aberration, turn it to 0. Film grain, 0. Vignette, 0. Lens distortion, 0. You don't want any of this stuff on. It's all, unless you're trying to make like a movie or something on Battlefield, unless you want the game to look like a film, you probably should turn most, if not all of that stuff off, because it doesn't really help you with actual gameplay. So I would recommend turning, most of that off. Leave your brightness at 50 or turn it up or down, whatever you want to do. Motion blur should go off though, and all of these things should go off too. Next up we got graphics. So my computer has an RTX 2070 Super, and my CPU is a Ryzen 7 3700X. So I've got like a, upper mid-range PC, I guess. So I'm running the game on ultra settings. Obviously, if you're having trouble getting FPS, could probably turn some of your settings down, maybe send them down to high or something like that. But I will show you what I am doing, even though I've got a pretty good computer. I have my anti-aliasing post-processing effects turned down to TAA low. You can also go TAA high. I have them on low though, because I feel like it's not something you really need. It's just a post-processing effect. It just makes the game look a little bit like neater, I guess, or more like a film, I guess. Ambient occlusion, I would recommend turning this off as well. It does take a decent amount of performance when it is on, so I would recommend turning that off. Next up for the advanced, we have the dynamic resolution scale. Dynamic resolution scale will deliver a more consistent frame rate at the cost of resolution. So I'd recommend turning that off. It could be good, but it could also be bad, so I just say, turn it off. Next up, we have NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency. NVIDIA Reflex is used to reduce system latency, which increases PC responsiveness. So I would recommend turning that on. Next up, we have Future Frame Rendering. When set to on, the game will buffer future frames, increasing visual smoothness, but increasing input lag. You don't want that. You don't want input lag. When you click your mouse, you want the bullet to hit the guy. You don't want like any gaps anywhere in there. So I would recommend turning that off. Vertical sync, I would also recommend turning that off. I would recommend turning VSync off because it locks the frame rate to the refresh rate of the full screen, which in theory sounds good. Now you might as well turn this off because basically what this is saying is even if your computer is making 100 FPS, it's going to lock it to, say you have a 60 Hz monitor, it's going to lock it to 60 Hz, which is 60 FPS, which does actually give you a slight disadvantage in like combat, because obviously if somebody's seeing 100 frames, and your computer is making 100 frames, but you can only see 60 and your computer is limiting you to seeing 60, you're at a disadvantage. So at least if you have this off, your computer is updating at 100 FPS. So at least you're getting 100 FPS, and you know, hopefully that is the same as, you know, what your enemies are also getting. Could be more, could be less. VSync just sucks. I would just recommend turning it off. So there you go. Last but not least, high fidelity objects amount. What is it? Okay, it's an R on here. Okay, high fidelity objects amount. So this increases or reduces the amount of soldiers and vehicles that can simultaneously be seen with high fidelity animations, sounds, and effects. A higher setting ensures a more consistent experience but may impact performance. I would recommend keeping this at a pretty high setting so that you can see what the enemies are doing in the distance. However, if you're struggling for FPS, this is one of those settings that you could probably turn down and you wouldn't really feel too much, and it might improve your performance, you know, a decent amount. Obviously, if you're really struggling with FPS, you can always turn some of these settings down, but just know that the game is a little bit laggy right now no matter what you do. So there you go. That's it for the graphics settings. Next up, let's go into HUD. For the HUD settings, we got camera shake amount. This is also a setting that was in, what was it, in video? Or was it in the one before? Okay, regardless, you're going to want to turn it to 0 because it sucks. Obviously, you can show or, you know, not show your HUD if you want to. Colorblind mode is in here. We got awards, vehicle seat, and critical messages. I'm actually going to turn critical messages off because I was complaining about that when I was playing the game. Basically, they will pop up in really big letters and kind of block some of your vision, which I don't really love. So anyway, I'm going to turn that off a little bit. Next up, we got Crosshair on the top here. So you can change your crosshair opacity, you can change the thickness of it and the color, as well as we got the hit indicator, which you can, you know, customize to your liking, which I really like. I'm really glad that they added this into the game. I think this is a huge step. I think that more games should do this. So there you go. If you want to change anything with your crosshair, this is where you do it. For the minimap, you can change the background opacity of it, so you know if you can see through it or not. And you can also change it to rotate with view, so you know where you're facing, your minimap will also rotate. I personally don't really care myself, but if you are interested in that, you can change it there. Next up, we got HUD icons. You can change the objective opacity and stuff like that so that you can actually see where, you know, enemies are and you're not blinded by B flag just posted up right in front of your face and you can't see the enemies that are standing behind it or whatever it may be. So that's also cool. That's right there if you guys are interested. So there you have it, guys. That's pretty much everything that I got for you guys. That's a rundown of my settings. That's what I personally am using right now, and it seems to be working pretty well for me. Obviously, if you guys copy this and it's not working for you, then you can change some settings around and stuff. Play with it. Don't be scared to try, you know, new settings and stuff like that. If you're struggling with FPS after watching this video, I would recommend just turning down some of the texture quality stuff, maybe some of the less important stuff like the ground foliage quality and stuff like that. That stuff doesn't really matter like a whole lot, so I'd recommend just turning that sort of stuff down, and eventually you'll get your game, you know, dialed in. Hopefully this video helped you out with that. If it did, leave a like if you don't mind, subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.